Welcome back to the Process Podcast. Today, our guest is Mehmet Gurtin, who is a member here at Coastal Fitness and the Process Programming as a Process athlete. Went to the 2024 Asia Fitness Championship in the men's 40 plus category, his first ever competition at 44 years old. So, what does it take to be a 44-year-old first time CrossFit competitor? Hear about it from Mehmet himself. All the different things about how to best prepare, how to best have your mindset, how to best make sure that you show up and do best for yourself, for your teammates, and for your family. So listen up. This is a great conversation as one competitive dad to another. There's a lot of good nuggets here to be a good athlete, a good person, a good father. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Process Podcast. Mems.
Hello.
Let's retrace our steps a little bit. This is not the first time that you actually been on this podcast. I know I told you before we started rolling that we would not disclose that you recorded this already, but things happen and we had a bit of a technical issue where we were unable to create that episode. So here again, and I thank you for coming
twice
back.
as excited about this conversation now.
Yes.
So there we go.
I'm going to do my best to ask you new questions today pertaining to your experience at the Asia Fitness Championship, which transpired just at the end of November.
Yep.
Basically a month ago. A little bit about yourself as a person, as an athlete, kind of what has been rolling through your head, reflecting back on the AFC as your first ever competition at 44 years old.
Yep.
All right.
Soon to be 45.
Nice. So that's exciting. It's exciting to see that you can put it out all on the line on the competition floor at not the spryest of age. Like I am turning 40 next year myself. So it's inspirational to say the least, to see that you can still kill it at this age and have like a pretty ripped abdominal area, which I still yet to have. So number one,
You're very kind. Thank you.
Number one, what brought you into, I guess, CrossFit? Tell me a little bit about yourself as an athlete.
So you know what? I'd always let's kind of take a couple of steps back, and in terms of sports and whatever, I'd always really enjoyed sports as a kid, and I kind of tried to do as many things as I really could.
Yeah.
And in the context, so I was born in Ankara in Turkey, where most of the schools won't have, to the Western, let's just say to the Western mindset, we wouldn't have big grass fields and, opportunities to play, well, certainly no rugby, cricket. But football was a thing, but you played football in little kind of concrete, smaller areas and back of the school and such.
Oh, okay. So when you were growing up, there wasn't a lot of like open area pitches and stuff like that.
It's just the reality of large cities in Turkey. There wouldn't be. But so look, I was always very sporty. I tried to do as many different things as I could. In fact, as a child, before moving to England, I did figure skating. So my sister and I were in a figure skating team. From my recollection, we trained like 2-3 times a week, during the winter months, and took it relatively seriously. I was in a gymnastics team. So, I did loads. And then
I'm going to have to stop you there. Like the figure skating thing. I don't think I've met many figure skaters in my life. So I just want to, I want to kind of indulge this part of your past a bit. Like, what was that like? And what were some things that you could do? Yeah. How did you get into that?
You know what? A really good question. So my parents aren't the kind of parents who ever pushed me nor my sister into sports. But I'm guessing they signed us up for this. I don't know why. Maybe because it must have worked well in terms of where my mum worked or where my dad worked, and I don't know exactly why. But you know what? I remember enjoying going fast. I remember doing the drills in terms of the jumps and the spins. I remember skating backwards very proficiently. I could still do some of those things now, less proficiently, less confidently.
Like you've done it like recently?
I think the last time I skated must have been a good, 4 or 5 years ago, but I could still skate backwards, only in one direction.
Yeah.
And I didn't try any of the jumps, and I wouldn't try those nowadays. But yeah, no, I remember it being really good fun. In fact, well, this is not so much fun, but I've got a big scar in the back of my head.
From figure skating?
Yes, from where I fell in the back of the ice, and there was loads of blood all over the ice and stuff. So yeah.
Holy shit.
So there's a little mark in my body.
Would you say that was one of your more serious injuries in sport?
No, God, no.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So figure skating's done. Little like Brian Boitano-ish memes. And then you got into gymnastics soon afterwards.
Yeah, so gymnastics was, I think, for a short while before we moved to England.
Yeah.
And it's the thing I remember most about gymnastics is now, as a man in my 40s, I'm not very flexible. So I
Mm.
always think I should do more mobility, I should stretch more. And the natural what you want to naturally assume is, oh, as a kid, I must have been very supple or agile. No, I wasn't. I remember the gymnastics coach sitting on my back so that I could really, really kind of, go beyond my toes comfortably.
Oh, so you were born with shit mobility,
I
as it
was
were.
born with, I don't know if I would term it mobility, but I was born with not agility. Just I just couldn't stretch very well. I mean, I would,
Yeah.
yeah. So
And you
maybe,
needed to have your coach to kind of just sit on you
yeah.
to force into these
I remember thinking
positions.
that was very uncomfortable and unpleasant, and yet I went back for some more
Yeah.
week after week. So yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And then, as I understand, one of your bigger passions ended up becoming rugby and football, right?
Yeah, so we moved to England when I was 8 years old, and typically more common, kind of let's just say Western sports. So I got into football. I played a lot of football. Um, so did that to a decent level where I played borough, county, university first team for 4 years that I was at university.
Yeah.
I was the school team rugby captain for 7 years. One of my prouder achievements is I scored in every single game of rugby I ever played in.
Whoa.
That was good. Yeah.
Okay.
But then I got to uni and, by this time I'd stopped growing a fair few years
Oh,
earlier.
okay.
And I didn't really fancy getting smashed by all of these guys who were like, twice my weight and
Yeah.
near that, twice my height. So I kind of quit rugby at uni and carried on playing football.
Yeah. And I know we talked about this, while we were at AFC about your football history. I was almost at soccer there. But one of the things that you do today still is you collect goalies' gloves, which I've
Yeah.
never even heard of this before.
So basically, this was as with many people during COVID, being locked up at home, kind of bored. I thought, well, what could I do? What could I do? Just follow one of my random passions. And as a kid, I would save up every penny of my pocket money to buy, the next pair of goalkeeper gloves. If you're a goalkeeper and you train and you play, you probably need realistically maybe 5 or 6 pairs of gloves to get you through a season.
Okay.
As a kid, I would maybe have 2 or 3 pairs, but I would really, really save up. And I thought, I wonder if I could actually go out and find some of these goalkeeper gloves from the 1990s.
Yeah.
And it emerged throughout those years. I could. So I would confidently say I must have the best 1990s vintage goalkeeper collection in Asia for the two key brands that were big in those days.
You really narrowed down that scope.
Yeah.
So I would agree.
Turkish collectors, there we go.
Yeah.
So even smaller. But no, I've got a good collection. I've got, for no other reason than just because these gloves were a real passion for me when I was a kid.
Just right off the top of your head, what is your most prized pair in that collection?
It's a pair of all sport gloves, black and white, kind of a little bit like a spider web pattern. And I just remember watching
Okay.
some of the pros playing those gloves, and I always wanted a pair of those, and I couldn't find them, I couldn't afford them.
Yeah.
And as a grown man, I have now some that I'll never use.
That's all right. So, I mean, this is all to say, your own personal history has been involved with the sport in a very, very long time. So where in that mix did CrossFit become something that you were doing to the point where now it's kind of like your leading sport, as it were?
Yeah. So you know what I mentioned, I grew up in London, spent some time in university in France and Spain, started working in London.
Yep.
I work in financial services, and at the time, we were a company really pretty much focused on Europe and US, and we didn't have any real presence in Asia. And I wanted to come out here, be one of the first salespeople selling what we had to sell.
Mhm.
So I moved to Singapore in 2010, and from there I moved to Hong Kong in 2014. And a very good American friend of mine in Singapore said, "Look, Mehmet, I think you'd really, really enjoy CrossFit. Give this thing a go."
Mhm.
And so my wife and my son, who'd just recently been born, were in the UK whilst they came out to Hong Kong first to try and set things up. And on my second day, I found a CrossFit box that was effectively just a couple of 100 yards away from my office.
I see.
And I signed up for the year without really knowing anything apart from, and yeah, I told you this story before. When I went into that gym, it was like, I don't know, it was like 8 p.m. or something. It was a
Yeah.
weird late session. There were just 3 guys in there. And one of those guys was Sul. So someone who's become my best friend since. And
Yeah.
Sul and 2 of his Arab mates. And I was like, is CrossFit an Arab thing or a Middle Eastern thing? I mean, I'm Turkish, so I'm kind of, I fit
You're
in
in the
well.
mix. Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
in the mix. So I was like, okay, let's give this thing a go. Uh, so as I've learned since, no, it's not exclusively a Middle Eastern or Arab thing, but
Yeah.
so I've grown to love it very much. And it was, yes, on the back of a recommendation from a friend in 2014.
Do you recall your first CrossFit workout?
Um, I recall there was an awful lot of burpees, and I recall trying to do some wall balls really, really badly. Um, and I also, this wouldn't have been the first workout, but some of
Yeah.
the other things I recall were I couldn't do an overhead squat with a PVC
Mhm.
pipe. I found that incredibly difficult and frustrating, and
Yeah.
seeing other people just, throwing weights around and, great mobility, and I just could not do it.
Like what is this impossible thing that they're
Yes,
doing?
exactly.
It's also funny you mentioned wall balls was in the mix because that was my first CrossFit workout as well.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was the stupidest thing. Well, actually, no, that was the second stupidest thing that I learned that day at my first CrossFit class. It was a mixture of wall ball shots and running like 400 meters around, the industrial park where we were in
Yeah, and that's
California.
that's
Well, and it was the height of barefoot running. So everyone was
ah,
wearing Vibram Five Fingers and they were teaching us how to do forefoot strike running where you're leaning forward and you're falling into the next step. And, I was coaching cross country at the time and I'd been doing triathlons and I was doing traditional, like just heel strikers, rolling with it, right? Kind
mm,
of running. And I was just thinking, this is the stupidest ass thing. And then a month later, I got my first pair of barefoot shoes. And then I've never done that kind of training before, but like I just remember my first impression was number one, I'm out of my element. Number two, this shit is really silly. Number three, let's try it again.
exactly, exactly. But you know what? That's the thing, right? Because some of these workouts in CrossFit, the mixed modal stuff, you look at them in complete isolation and they make no sense. You're like, why on earth would you pair these two things
Mm.
together? And what the hell is it for? But then, over the course of many weeks and months that you train, it all makes so much sense. And it is the fact that, we get exposed to so many things that you always want to improve on something.
That immediately, the mixed modal part, that immediately speak to the part of you that had done so many sports in the past.
Yeah, I think so. And also, and I see people here who've joined fairly recently, the upward curve, the early upward curve on
Yeah.
CrossFit is so steep if you're a good general sports person and you're body aware
Mhm.
that it's very, intoxicating is a strong word, but it's very addictive, right? Because
Yeah.
you see the improvements you're making on so
Yeah.
many
Yeah.
aspects. So, in that typical sense, I really, really fell into it. And I was also very lucky that I was working out with a bunch of guys who became my bestest friends.
Nice.
So I would work out with 6 or 7 guys, my bestest friends in Hong
Yeah.
Kong every single day. And we were each a little bit better than each other at different things. So there was a constant strive
Mhm.
to improve, to push. So competitive but supportive. So I was very, very lucky in the crew that I got into the sport with.
Yeah. So like, part of it was, the connections that you made. I mean, that was the reason why you walked into a CrossFit gym in the first place because of a recommendation from a friend. You made your friends in the gym, and they were about the same ability level, if not a little bit better, to push each other.
Yes,
And then
exactly.
now, how many years into the sport have you been?
So this coming up to 11 years.
So 11 years. Excuse me. It's been 11 years, and now you did your first real competition. I use air quotes because you've done local competitions and uh, throwdowns in house and with other gyms in
Yeah.
Hong Kong. And not to take away from that, but doing a large competition, I would say, and maybe you agree, is that it's a different feel in the sense that these are not people in your gym or surrounding gyms. These are people from all over the world. AFC had people from Korea, all over China, Japan, Kazakhstan, Philippines, the US,
Singapore. Yeah.
Russia, Singapore, Malaysia. I mean, it was the Asia CrossFit Championship. So I'm essentially just rattling off Asian country names. But at the same time, like you go there and you're competing against people you probably have never met before, right? So I guess question number one, why did you feel like you were ready to finally do it?
Um, you know what? In all honesty, I didn't feel ready.
Hmm.
But I did feel like, you know what? If I don't give this thing a go, then I run the risk of never giving it a go.
I
And
see.
I just remember, some of the social media that, Ant and Karan put out last year from AFC, and it just looks so much fun.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I bugged Ant on this for quite a lot of time, just saying, when is it? When is it coming up? When is it? When are they?
Yeah.
And I bugged you as well. When are the qualifiers? How do we get to this thing? So I was really, really keen to give it a go. And look, to your point, there's a world of difference between competing against people that you work out with day in, day out versus people who you don't know, people
Mhm.
whose abilities you have no idea. So, for me, it was a really, really great stage to expose myself to see, of course, in relative terms, in age group, whatever, do I belong? Am I in the right place?
Yeah.
Should I be doing this? Am
Yeah.
I going to embarrass myself? So yeah.
Okay, so you walked into this knowing that it could go one of two ways. Number one, I belong in this sport and I belong in this region, in this age group, in this competitive sphere, because technically you did belong because you qualified. But number two, or am I completely out of my depth and am I not as good as maybe I think I am? Like you walked into it with a little bit of that.
A very quick break from this episode to talk about our sponsors, fetaq. fetaq have an awesome training shoe that all Move 3. It's a very versatile shoe and it's unbelievably comfortable. I've been using this shoe now for the last 4 months and honestly, it has smashed every other training shoe I have used out of the water. And we have a unique discount code for the process. If you enter the process at checkout, you will receive a 20% discount. So head over to fetaq.com and get your shoes now.
Yeah, 100%. And look, last time you and I spoke, we talked about what was my number one motivator or what was my biggest fear in this. But the biggest fear was don't be last. And you know what? Again,
It's a simple one. Yeah.
Yeah, look, it's a simple one. And look, and I think about it, right? I mean, if I had been last, you know what? To be honest, it wouldn't have been that bad because I still would have put myself out there. I would have still tried hard, but then, it would have been a bit of a kick in the gut. And also because the fact that it was 4 days away from family at a time when, so my wife runs a charity. They had their big annual gala,
Oh, okay.
Pathfinders. I wasn't able to attend that. My daughter had a big gymnastic competition and she did really well. And I missed that. So I was feeling somewhat torn. I mean, the timing wasn't ideal, but I just, anyone who knows me will know that I don't miss out on things to do with the kids. So whether it's my son's BJJ, my daughter's school or gymnastics, I always make sure I attend and I love to do so. So this was a bit of a, it was a difficult choice to go ahead and say, no, I'm going to do this. I know I'm missing these things. And I guess if I'd come last, then I would have felt a bit shit about it. I was like,
I had the exact same realization. I had the same exact feeling.
Because it was your birthday as well,
It was my
right?
birthday weekend, and ever since I've had kids and been married, I'd never spent my birthday away from my wife and family. So this was the first one. So in my head, and I talked about this in the last podcast episode, was once I started doing poorly and I was not meeting the moment as I described, I felt like I did all of this. I went away from my family. I'm not spending the time that I want to spend with them, with these strangers that I've never met and exercising against them. And I'm just shitting the bed. What is this? Like, this is not worth it. This is me not belonging, right? You get in your head about that. And I guess this is a good transition is because of the competition sphere and the expectations there and the pressure that you put on yourself that you just described, if you have a bad workout here at Coastal, you can kind of walk away from it and go back to your job, go back to your family, and that's fine. You can shake it off. At a competition, because of all of that pressure, did that sense of pressure feel different for you? And did you handle it well? Or are there moments where you felt like you could have done better?
Yeah, look, 100% I could have done better. And I definitely had one workout, which was like, significantly where I placed, I mean, it wasn't that low, but it was out of the 4 workouts, this was my lowest. And I just kind of, it wasn't one where I expected to do badly. And it was just, and I just prepared badly. I wasn't in the right mind frame. So yeah, luckily the very first event I placed in the top 10. So I was like, okay, that gave me a lot of comfort at the end of day one. I was like, okay, cool. So I'm not completely out of my depth, but that was the one that was, the kind of longer event that was a little bit more to do with maybe more general overall fitness rather than any specific CrossFit skills. So that was perhaps arguably an easier workout. But on day 2, it was a workout with the heavy bag toss, the rope climb. I did in terms of what I could have done, I did quite poorly. And you know what? And one of the main reasons was when I went out into that stadium to what we're talking about. I've never been in a big competition, right? And then you walk through a tunnel, and for those people who've watched sports, and I guess anyone listening to this podcast will have watched sports on TV, but the feel is very similar to when you watch, I don't know, a Premier League club waiting to get out onto the pitch, and they're in a small corridor. So there you are in heats of athletes waiting into the corridor. You come out the corridor and it's incredibly bright lights. It's noisy. There's all the judges lined up. There's all the photographers. I won't lie and say thousands of fans, but hundreds of people there.
I was gonna say is like sometimes there were heats where because of the organization of it, like sometimes masters went first, sometimes teams went first,
Yeah.
sometimes elites went first. That would have some bearing of how many people would be showing
100%.
up.
If you were going after the elites, it was a busy stadium and full of people. So that first workout that I went into, I got proper emotionally overwhelmed. So, and I was just like, shit, I'm not ready for this. What the hell is this? I've never had to work out in this environment. So that was a real shock. And I really had to kind of compose myself. And that composing myself took a few minutes, to be honest. It just, every rep I did got better. I improved. But by the time I improved and really kind of got into the workout and got into just, being comfortable with what I'm doing, I was already, for my heat, I think I was the last in my heat. I was last in that one. So that was disappointing. And one of the big things I learned was, you know what, I should have just gone out to the stadium beforehand, just known what to expect. And also I should have practiced specifically with the movements there rather than just, kind of relying on what I can do on the floor here at Coastal.
I mean, one of the things that you and I both chose to do was to arrive on briefing day. And then we ended up arriving way after the brief was over. So maybe that's one word of advice is the day before in these competitions, there is going to be a briefing day, and make damn sure you attend that.
Yeah, look, you're right. Anybody who's truly serious about performing well in these competitions, you do have to make quite a time commitment. And, for the similar reasons, I think you and I both chose to travel a bit later because we'd already away for so long.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you know what? To be present in the stadium for that briefing, to actually get a feel of what it might feel like, I would have done a little bit better.
Yeah,
for sure.
Would you say that in terms of the work volume and the intensities, this ranks it up there as among the hardest CrossFit weekends you've done?
No, I don't. I think it was. No, I don't know if it was one of the quarterfinals or something. I can't remember, but. Look, it wasn't right. It was four workouts over a 3-day period, and some of the events were only a 10-minute time cap, right? I mean, in terms of event 4. So no, the workload was fine. I think, to be honest, we probably would have. You and I both probably preferred a 5th event on maybe.
Looking back, I kind of,
you wouldn't.
I feel like it was just intense enough. But I mean, I think one of the things was clear to see was for masters athletes, the volume was lower than at the elite.
And you know
level,
what?
right?
And maybe this is done on purpose by people who know much more about this than I do. And had we done 5 events rather than 4, I would have been like, oh man, I'm absolutely shattered. That was too much. So who knows? Yeah. But I felt like, by the end of that, the very last workout, I had a lot in the tank. I really, and I gave it my all. And that's the one I probably feel, most proud of.
Nice.
Yeah.
And in that sense, because the other part of competition is because you're away from home and you're sleeping in a hotel room. What was your recovery like? What was your sleep like? I know sometimes people say that when they compete and they're in a hotel, their sleep quality is real shit and they can't really recover from that. But how was it for you?
So, and again, you and I talked about this, right? I think we both sleep better with our wives in bed.
Yeah.
So, sleeping on your own in a strange hotel room, and very nice, perfectly nice hotel room. Yeah,
it's not home.
Yeah, exactly. It's not home. What was interesting was that I probably and inevitably got influenced by the people around me. So, one of the biggest plus points of this was, experiencing this event and watching, for example, someone like Ant and how he's experiencing it. So a truly elite top performer. I mean, just because he's a good friend, you sometimes forget how good he is and how special he is in this sport, right? And how looked up to he is. So watching him and the way he kind of looked after himself and he, the way he took time out in between events and stuff, that was super interesting for me, a real learning experience. Obviously spent a lot of time with Ed. Now, Ed likes to, I didn't realize this, Ed likes to eat a lot. So, I mean, like for breakfast, man, the guy was just like putting away plates and plates of rice. And I think,
and he was stealing trays and trays of rice.
Exactly, stealing bowlfuls of breakfast for lunch later. But you know what? I think I got influenced by that, right? Because I wouldn't have that big a breakfast, but I was having
scarfing.
More than I would normally have. And
I remember last year at AFC, similar thing. He wasn't an athlete last year, but he was coaching. But because of that, he was very present in how his athletes were doing. And he kept telling me I was under eating. And so I should have a big meal, essentially before every event. And I just had, the nerves were running through me. I just couldn't. And then just the idea of like, well, I don't really eat that much before a workout anyway. And he just keeps like hammering in my head, like, this is not your home workout. This is your running high on adrenaline. You need as much recoverability as you can get all the good nutrients in you and get it before it's too late. Right. Cause you need to have time to digest and everything. So there's just a big breakfast, a big lunch after a workout.
And you know what?
The volume's a lot.
Yeah. And on the topic of eating, I mean, Dazza, he needs a little bit of a shout out. I've never seen,
put it away.
My God, I've never seen anyone eat so much at dinner. I mean, I think he had enough to eat those 2 nights that we ate together. He on alone probably ate for 3 on both nights. And so that was
he
interesting.
Just kept ordering
that was interesting.
At that Japanese restaurant. He just kept ordering trays and trays of just meats, and he just kept putting it away. So shout out for sure. In terms
the one thing I also wanted to comment on was, again, being a first-time competitor in an event like this, what you don't realize and what you don't necessarily prepare yourself for is also the boredom. I mean, there's an awful lot of boredom because, it's
what was the boredom like for you?
Look, it was kind of okay in that because there was a lot of us from the process programming kind of community.
You're just talking about just general downtime between events.
Yeah, I mean, there's an awful lot of time to kill.
Yeah.
And I'm not very good at being still. I like to move around. And again, look, we talked about this last time, but the athlete experience for all athletes was absolutely phenomenal.
For sure.
So, I very much felt like as a masters athlete, I was treated exactly the same as the elites. And what I mean by that for people listening is, the athlete village, the so-called athlete village was phenomenal, right? Our warm-up area, our cool-down area, the changing room. So that was, on day one for the first few hours, that was a real kind of interest. And, you spend time, you look around and, but then after a while, it's also becomes a little too stimulating, right? And,
for sure.
And I didn't realize this, but I think we're going to talk about the overall feelings and whatever of the event, but it really, really hit me. I got on a bit of a low after the incredible highs of that competition for about the next maybe 7-8 days. I was on quite a low, and I didn't realize. It's only when I kind of look back on it, it took me a few days to realize what was happening and why I was feeling that way. But so one, the boredom that you're not, the killing time you're not really prepared for, that was a surprise to me. And 2, also after the massive highs of the event, the real come down that I experienced.
In terms of working within the team, and because you mentioned this with Ant, and that was something that I really wanted to ask about, we never got a chance to the last time before, was you are on your own in these events, right? This isn't a team workout. This is an individual workout, but we're with the Process Program community. We had 24 or so athletes there that weekend. To what extent was that important for you? You did mention that seeing what they were doing in between events was helpful to inform you what you should do. But was there anything else in terms of preparing for workouts, understanding how to strategize, that support?
You know what? I mean, the fact that Ed is the head coach and he does all the programming, right? So having him, and of course being mindful and respectful of the fact that he was there as an athlete. So you can't just hog all his time by asking him a million questions. Sure. But nonetheless, getting some insight from him as to how he is preparing for certain events, what might make a difference in terms of where do you push hard, where you hold back a little bit. So all of those things definitely helped. And I really, I'm always very impressed with Ant's general demeanor, right? Because he's not someone he doesn't get phased. And, an injury occurs and he doesn't get phased. He just gets on with it. He does the best he can. I really try to take a little bit from him in terms of not having during the competition too many highs and lows, but just riding it, trying to ride as steady as you can so you perform well. But the biggest thing for me was the sense of community. So spending time with you, with Ant, getting to know Ivan, so people who I'd seen around, Aki, so people I'd seen around but I hadn't got to know, Cynthia, 100%. So just spending time together made the whole thing so much more enjoyable for me. I mean, you know what, I would have felt very proud come the end of it, even if I was on my own, but being able to share my emotions with people that, some of the people that are close friends, other people that I look up to, that made the whole thing much more special. And, we talked about it, like what I would love to have next year is I'd love to have Topher there. I love to have Sul there. I love to have Ho Yin there, so that when I'm
Yeah.
out doing those competitions on the floor, I look across the lanes and there's people I know and I'm actually rooting for them. I want to beat them, but I'm also rooting for them. I
Yeah,
want
sure.
them. So, you know, that would also be super cool. But like having the community around me made the whole thing so much more special.
Okay. And I mean, one thing that was cool to see on your side is just kind of how relaxed you were throughout the whole weekend. I think you were very present. I think that's what it was. Is that it seemed very clear to me that you were aware of how special this moment was, and you'd look out at the bright lights, and there are photos of you just taking in every event, looking at the crowd, looking at the camera, as it were, having your shirt off half the time, those little things. And it just seemed like you were just really, truly enjoying the moment. Were you, looking back,
Yeah, and
truly enjoying the moment?
look, I got goosebumps now. And I thought the second time we had this conversation, I wouldn't maybe have the same emotional reaction, but I am. I'm having exactly the same
Yeah.
reaction now, and I've got goosebumps all over. So, you know what? I was really aware of how good it felt, and I really tried to be present, and I really tried to take it in exactly as you say. And like at the end of the final workout, we had a beautiful group photo, all of the athletes on the floor.
Yeah.
But after all of that, I held back. And maybe I spent 30 seconds, maybe a minute, but in one part of the stadium, just looking around, taking it all in,
Mhm.
kind of trying to almost carve into my memory how this felt, how this being in this environment feels, and how much I enjoyed it, and looking at the crowds and looking at the photographers. So look, I tried to be present, and I have to say I enjoyed the whole thing so much. And it's the one overriding feeling I came away from it was, I felt genuinely really, really proud of myself.
Mhm.
And again, not necessarily proud of ultimate rank. I mean, that's less important. But out of the 28 people in my age group, I ranked 12th. So
Mhm.
that was, I was happy with that. That's
It's definitely
solid.
not last. Yeah.
Yeah, that's solid. That's upper half of the table.
Yeah.
So I felt good. But I felt really proud of myself that I did this, that it felt right, that I built good connections, that I pushed hard, that I learned quite a few things, so that hopefully
Mhm.
I'm going to work my ass off. I really want to be back there again next year, but
Yeah.
hopefully next year I'll do a little bit better
Mhm.
because some of the little things that I've learned I'll be able to put in practice. But I did, and yeah, and look, and of course, I tried to build some kind of short-term rapport with the judges and the photographers that were
Yeah.
there, and you know, if it's not if there's not good photographic evidence, did it really happen? So yeah.
I wanted to quickly interrupt this episode with a quick shout out to our sponsors, Today Well Spent. I've been using this journal for 2 years and it has made a massive impact on my physical, but mostly my mental well-being. It is a guided journal backed by neuro and behavioral science, which I actually didn't know at the time. It has questions for you to answer at the start of the day, at the end of the day, end of every week, end of every month, and it's brought so much self-awareness to me of the things that positively and negatively impact my life. So if you're someone who cares about your physical and your mental well-being, which I think you do because you listen to this podcast, then go and grab yourself a Today Well Spent. Use the discount code THEPROCESS, one word in capitals, to get your discount.
I think one of the things that, again, this being your first competition, the things that you learn that you don't realize you need to learn or just aren't aware of the consequences of is the competition skills. So I'm going to give you an example that I remember you speaking to Ed about at one of the big breakfasts the next day. Was after event number 2, which involved rope climbs, sandbag over the yoke, and box jump overs. And, I think the first thing that you told Ed when he asked you, like, what should you have done to get better? And you just said, "Oh, I just need to be fitter. If I'm fitter, then I can move more reps." And then he kind of broke it down for you as one limiter that you don't even need to be fitter about is the efficiency of your rope climb. And what he said was that you would take a long slide down, maybe about 2-3 seconds, where you could do a more efficient technique. And what he described was once he reaches the top of the rope, he grabs the rope where his feet are, and then he descends from there to make it about a 1 second descent, which means that you save 1 or 2 seconds. And if you do 10 rounds, that's about 10-20 seconds save time
Yeah.
from the rope climb, which could mean 2-3 more reps depending on what you're doing. If we're talking about getting to the sandbag, maybe even 3 or 4, and that every rep counts, right? And that
Look,
whole
such a- yeah,
breakdown.
it's such a good point because
So I'm just what I'm trying to describe is these are like the little things that Were you aware of that beforehand?
No,
And now what do you think?
One of the biggest specific lessons with that is, for specific skills that we feel we're good at, like, I feel I'm really good at legless rope climb. I'm really good at that. I can almost hold my own against anyone. I'm good at that.
Okay.
But what I'd never bloody practiced was coming down efficiently, because what I would do here or Asphodel or wherever is climb up, take a few steps down, and then jump down. Well, it just so happened in this competition, the head judge told me, no, you can't jump down. You got to control the rope until you get to the floor. I'd never ever done that. I'd never once practiced that skill. And that's what really, excuse the language, that's what really fucked me up on that second workout. It really cost me a lot of, it cost me quite a few points.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things I've really learned is don't just rely on the stuff you're good at, but practice the skills around that. So stuff that you don't normally expose yourself to. So 100%. Yeah.
That being said, as an opener for going back to this being a competition of your peers in the Asian region who you've never competed with before and maybe met for the first time, are there any specific skills that you would like to work on that if you put in the time in the next 11 months until next year's AFC, you'll show up knowing that you've worked hard on it and improved it?
So look, the overarching sense behind this is the fact that I'm very grateful, even at my age. I feel like I'm continuing to improve in almost every aspect of the sport. Yeah. So I can't really think of anything where my numbers or my performance is going down. I think I'm getting better at things. I'm getting a bit smarter. I'm getting more efficient. But, for example, compared to my overall exposure to CrossFit style movements, what I'm strong and weak at, I've got to get stronger in my legs. I got to get stronger in my squat. Yeah, how comfortable I am with heavier squats, for example. I mean, it's just, that's just one part that's, I think, lets me down.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that you're much more upper body biased over lower body.
Yeah.
So, very simple question. What's going to take for you to be stronger in your lower body?
Yeah. So look, I think aside from what we have here, I need to embark on a proper program for just leg strength and squatting. And, that's, as long as you put this time aside to that, it's, there are people who are very good at prescribing these workouts and, over a certain number of weeks. And it's something that's certainly achievable. And I don't think it would take that much for me to get, 5 to 10% better than I am now. And that's, within the scope of what we do, that's a big difference.
Are you aware that Ed himself wrote a 12-week squatting program that is available in the process programming?
No, I was not. That's a good plug. I wasn't actually. No.
We often give him shit for it because he doesn't get as many signups as our other traditional programs. And I'm starting to think that maybe people aren't just aware of it. So you can check it out and see what you can get out of that.
I shall.
Other than that, in terms of competition, looking forward to next year, right? Because it sounds like you'll do AFC again next year.
I would love to, yeah.
Yeah, what else is in your horizon after having done this? I would assume your CrossFit career is not done now.
No. So look, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because in the whole kind of sport of CrossFit and CrossFit HQ, things have changed, right? So something I always really, really enjoyed was quarterfinals. So that's no longer.
Right.
There will be no quarterfinals. And, I think this year will be the first year I'm in that next bracket of 45 to 49.
I see.
So it'd be interesting to see how close I get to a semi-final spot. I don't think I'll get that close, but I'd like to try and push it as hard as I can. But outside of that, Callis Games, why not? AFC 100%. I'm gonna push hard to do that.
Yeah.
And I think maybe there'll be more competitions in and around the region that I would love to try my hand at. So look, in short, I am so happy that I took the step and gave this thing a go, and I absolutely loved it.
Nice. And to kind of wrap things up in terms of you being proud of yourself, you did mention that you are a proud father. You got 2 kids at home and a lovely wife as well. Do you feel like you did well for them, that you made them proud? And how do you know? And how did you think about that during your weekend?
You know what? I get ridiculously emotional on stuff to do with my kids. So, for example, if I was pushing hard and they were there cheering for me, in a strange way, that wouldn't be helpful because I would get too emotional about it.
I've been there.
But you know what? I was really, really proud to show them the photos from the event afterwards. I was really proud to show them the athlete jerseys with my name on it.
Yeah.
I was really proud of that to show them. And look, on the whole, what I really hope is I set a good example, and I'm confident that I do that. You know, this whole thing we do, the fitness, the health, and because here really it's not just about lifting; it's more about holistic fitness, and I think that's one of the best things about this place, and by that I mean Coastal. But I just really hope that I'm setting a good example to them and making them a little bit more aware.
Yeah.
And that's coming through. And my son now, for the first time this year, is keen to kind of work out together. He's more mindful of the stuff that he eats.
Yeah.
My daughter's a very natural athlete anyway. She usually picks things up very well, and she's we kind of have fun together doing stuff. But yeah, and you know what? The one thing I jotted this down because I was thinking about.
What's that?
Yeah, it's a quote from the Baz Luhrmann song "Wear Sunscreen." But the part of that song I love best is this bit where it says, "Enjoy your body, use it every way you can. Don't be afraid of it. What other people think of it. It's the greatest instrument you'll ever own." And I love that, and I think I've had that mentality ever since I was a child in terms of jumping, lifting, running. And, that's kind of taken me through to something like CrossFit, which is so multidisciplined and which does expose us to a ton of things where we constantly strive to be better and push towards our limits. And again, I think, you know what, as we age, unless you're very deliberate about it, it's very easy to fall into a place where you don't push the limits. And it's so funny, right? The amount of family, and this is typically family, like the older family in Turkey that say to me, "Oh, okay, it's time for you to just, ease off a bit. Don't push so hard." And I'm like, but no, but that is the really fun part where you push hard and you discover more about yourself. Of course, be smart. Don't go like we're talking about today's workout and today's, we got to max out on 3 lifts. I'll be sensible, but it's the fact that you are pushing yourself to the edges of your ability that I find so much fun.
So, and we are wrapping this up, but you bring up a really good question, especially being a master's athlete, is how do you know that you can still push? And how do you know how much you can push before you push too much for yourself? How do you define that? Because for me, it's something that is always a moving target, it seems.
Yeah. I think humility is a good one in that, right? I mean, you've got to chuck pride out the window. I mean, as much as I would love to be able to compete with everyone in this gym, coaches excluded, I can't. Some people are just stronger than me, just definitely fitter than me. And I'm not gonna kill myself to try and do stuff that I just can't do. Or nowadays, if I feel a particular, I don't know, twinge or ache or whatever, you know what? I don't push too hard at that. Like, actually it was this week, Sophia, my daughter, and I, we went over to do some sprint training together.
Oh, damn.
So whereby each time we sprinted, I gave her, first of all, a 15-minute head start, 15-meter head start, then 17, then 20, then 22 and a half.
And you just chase her down?
Yes, exactly. Okay. So I run 100, she runs, 85, 80, whatever. And of course, every single sprint got progressively harder. And in the last one, I must have beaten her by, honestly, maybe 1 meter.
Yeah.
But after that, I felt my hamstring for about 2 days. And I was like, yeah, that was a little silly. I could have actually made more of an effort to properly warm up on that.
Yeah.
So look, I'm just trying to be a little bit more body aware. I'm trying to be more deliberate in terms of my sleep, my rest. I'm loving the sauna.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just try to be a little bit more sensible.
Yeah. I'm just imagining you putting your body on the line so you can again and again defeat your preteen daughter.
But you know what? But you know what? The good thing about what that was, it was a way that we could do it where we both pushed hard.
Yeah.
And it was still fun and it was still competitive. It wasn't like,
nice.
I wasn't kicking her ass at 100 meters and, like this is like giving her the finger from the finish line. It wasn't that. It was just
you could.
I had to work hard for it. And I truly believe that, if I was to let her win easy, it wouldn't be valuable. She wouldn't want to go out there next time and really want to beat me. Whereas now she knows it's within reach,
Yeah.
If we put her onto that 78 meter line or whatever, 75 meter line, she will beat me. And I think that gives us some encouragement. And it also gives me encouragement because I don't want to let her win. I want to try my best.
For sure.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit there myself, not in terms of like I can out squat my kids 100%. But right now it's like both my kids, like the way that they're growing, they're definitely gonna be taller than me like very soon.
Oh,
like,
I feel you.
My oldest daughter is 8, and she'll probably be taller than me before she's 14. There's nothing I can do about that. So now I need to think of like, what are the things that like I can teach her to do, and that, for a while I'll be better than her at, and then at some point, I'll do my damnedest to make sure that I'm pushing her and pushing myself.
Yeah.
Because everyone can get strong, right?
Yeah, and you know what? And I know Sul has this with his oldest son, where again they have a bet that up until he gets to a certain age, he won't be able to beat him.
I see.
And again, he doesn't let him win. This is a real thing, and I just think that's really. And you know what? It takes me back to one of the proudest and immediately at the same time saddest things I've ever experienced was the first time I ever beat my dad in an arm wrestle, because it's trying to win. That's the part that's really cool, but you want to see your parents as heroes. So the first time I ever beat him, I was really fucking sad for that day. That made me actually sad. I was just like, oh man, I wish that actually hadn't happened. I wish there was
like
another
you broke your hero.
Yeah, I wish there was for another 5 years I couldn't.
Yeah.
So I hope they feel that way, and I certainly plan to give them that challenge for as long as I can.
That's nice. I haven't thought of it that way either. Is like when I got home from AFC and my daughter said, "Did you get first place?" I said, "Nope, I didn't get first place. Like, not even close." She's like, "There's people that are stronger than you," and I was thinking, "Oh my god, you little idiot! Like, how do you think I'm this strong?" But at the same point, it's like the amount that they look up to us, right? Because we are their whole world, right? We create the world around them, and therefore we are the guides of this world. So our position in their world is very, very high on a pedestal. So that type of responsibility makes me strive to be a better person every day in every aspect, 100%. Holistically, like you said, and that includes being physically fit and being physically capable. And having good value structures that are clear and concise and consistent.
I love how this conversation has become almost as much about fatherhood as it has about competition. But because that reflects our values, right?
Well, and I think when you are a parent, there is competition there, like you're just describing, right? In all aspects. Sometimes we compete against other dads and other parents, not in just physical manners, but like in being a good parent, right? Yeah. Like we size each other. That's just what we just compare and stuff. But like you said, if you're in a good environment where we're pushing each other to be our best, not only in a back squat, but like in being present at each of our kids' recitals and stuff, then that's how we, really do help each other out as a team. And I think if that's maybe a parting message is like, look, man, when we are teammates, it means that in so many other aspects than just, sharing the squat rack. Right? Yeah. It's like sharing our experiences and making sure that we are able to do our best because we're giving each other the tools that we need to succeed.
Yeah. And look, when you suffer together with people, you inevitably get closer to them.
Yeah.
And that's what a little bit like pushing towards your max effort is like, right? Or pushing really hard in a workout next to somebody who's a good friend, and you look at each other and you're both on the floor and you're dying and you look at each other, but there's there's mutual respect. You're like,
we had that last week
exactly.
on the assault bike sprint.
Exactly.
Where like we didn't acknowledge that we were trying to beat each other on the assault bike. You're on the assault bike, I was in an echo bike, so the math isn't math. But at the same time, it's like, shit, he got off the kettlebell swings before I did. I better catch up with him on the burpees.
Yeah, I was working my ass off to catch you on the burpees. It was so much faster.
And we were just both done at the end of the fifth round. Oh God. Yeah. But in any case, I mean, I guess I just want to say I do appreciate you as a teammate, as a friend, as a fellow father. And I am more than excited to see your career thrive in CrossFit and in other aspects. To Mem's daughter, beat him in a race.
She will. She most certainly will. And look, thank you so much for having me. And I really hope, this has been interesting for, the dozens, perhaps, of people listening.
Give yourself some credit.
And, the final message I would say within the context of first-time competitions is it's fun. It's a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Just go for it. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Take it as that kind of learning experience.
Sure.
But it's so much fun, and I wished I'd done it earlier.
Nice. Well, now is a good time.
Exactly.
All right. Sweet.
Thank you so much. Thank you.